Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today, Michael, your topic, profit first.
Thanks, Dallas. It's funny, we're coming up to 10 years in business this November. And I remember way back when we first started reading a book called Profit First by Michalowicz. I hope I've pronounced that right. But it was a great book to read at the start. And I just went back and reread that book just recently, and thought, geez, this would be great on the podcast because it can be adapted
to a household
level. And it's stuff that we talk about all the time. So the premise of the book is that the old way, and it's written for businesses, this book, Profit First, the old way of thinking is that the revenue of a business minus the expenses equals the profit. However, there is a problem with that, in that expenses always creep in. So you see, as a business grows, its revenue starts out at $0, and it gets to it gets to $100, and it gets to $10,000, and it gets to $100,000. All along the way, what you find under this traditional old way of thinking is that the revenue and the expenses grow hand in hand, so that the business ends up turning over $1 million, or they have a revenue of $1 million. Expenses creep in so that they have, say, $950,000 of expenses. So they only have $50,000 profit. So revenue, the old way of thinking, revenue, $1 million of income in, minus expenses, hey, that's crept up to $950,000. Equals profit of only $50,000 in this case. So you see it, as you say, you can see that in business all the time, and you can feel the allure of that month to month in your business, where money hits the bank account, and it's sort of sitting there until you go, well, what are my expenses for the month? You don't go, what should I actually spend? And you don't normally break it down every month and go, this. What you actually do is you go, well, there's money in the bank account, so we can do whatever we want to do. If we want to buy this thing, or we want to spend this money on this service or this product or whatever, you can just go and do it. So the incentive is it's easy to just go, well, there's money there, let's just go and spend it. And that's what you're saying, is that's where those expenses creep up, is that if your revenue every month goes up and up and up, and you're used to just looking at, is there money in the bank account? Yes. Okay, well then we can spend it. You're always going to have that. They're climbing in lockstep with each other. You're right there, Dallas. And there's always another business that's there to offer you a service, or there's always another business that's there to offer you some software or something like that. So I mean, there's always things you could spend your money on, just like time as well. So you could spend, every single person listening here could spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at work, and they would always have something to do. However, if they focus that into 7 or 8 hours a day, then you'll find that the cream rises to the top. The cream rises to the top. So
in terms of the most important work gets done first, and that's
absolutely.
It is, like you say, that it's sort of comical when you think of it with time, because it is a good analogy where you go, if you have 24 hours to work, if we didn't have to sleep and if we were just machines that worked all day, like you say, we would find 24 hours worth of work every day, and it would just be a matter of, in the same way that every human being, it seems like, on earth has a 40-hour work week. You can't tell me that everyone has the same amount of work to do every week as each other and as the week before. It's sort of a bizarre way that we think about it.
It's funny you should raise that too, because I've just thought of a story. I think I've used this on the podcast before, but my wife says he's a bit of a, you'd say on the hoarding side of things, and I'm on the minimalist side of things. And one day I was looking for, I don't know, something I can't even remember what it was. I was looking for something, and I opened every single drawer in the house.
Yeah.
And there was stuff so jam-packed in every single drawer.
Yeah.
That as I opened it, something flew out of
it.
I remember feeling this level of stress and anxiety, and I said to Susie, I'm going to grab a bag and throw all this stuff out. What are you talking about? We need all of this stuff, she says. We need all of this stuff. I said, what are the odds?
What are
the odds that we bought a house
space that we have?
We bought a house with exactly the
amount of storage
space that we needed to contain all of our stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not true. If we had half the storage space, we'd have half the stuff.
Yeah.
If we had 3 times the storage space, we'd have 3 times the stuff.
And that's exactly, like you're saying, that's exactly what happens in a business and exactly what happens at a household level, is that whatever the amount of money is that hits the tin every fortnight, what a surprise. That's the amount of money that we need to live on. That's what our expenses are.
So businesses do it and households do it.
Yeah.
So, look, in the book Profit First by Michalowicz, he says the new way of thinking is to flip that around. So instead of revenue minus expenses equals profit, revenue minus profit equals expenses. So basically what he advocates, and we've done this from day one with our business, is to actually treat your profit like it's an expense and to park that money away, first of all, so that you have a predefined profit percentage or profit dollar amount. So what I'm talking about there is that revenue of $1 million, this business is different from the other business that was earning the same revenue of $1 million, and it said we want to make a profit of $300,000. So we're gonna park $300,000 of profit to the side out of our revenue of $1 million, and what that leaves left over is $700,000 of expenses to run the business. So you start with a different frame of mind there, because you then know that you've got to fit in every single expense under that predefined level of expenses.
And what you're basically doing is taking that concept that you just said, what a surprise, whatever that amount is that you decide is left over after that profit.
Yeah.
Magically, your business the expenses will shave down to meet that target, because that's just the amount of money that's left over.
And it's interesting. I mean, you and I do this every single year. So we look at what we spent our money on last year from a business point of view. We look at what we can cull.
Yeah.
We cull it. We look at what we can reduce. We reduce it. We look at, do we really need this thing or not? Yeah. So, like a good example is that I recently came across a new piece of whiz-bang software that we could use for the business called Quilla. Yeah. And what I looked at from that, we'd just done this. We'd just done this exercise where we'd been through what we spent our money on last year and looked at what we're going to spend our money on this year. And I thought, I really want this piece of software. What we need to do is fit it under the cap though. So I actually dialed down some other software that we weren't using all the bells and whistles of that. To be able to, I bought this new software, and even in that discussion with the sales rep there, he said, there's the business model and there's the enterprise model, and the enterprise model's that bit more expensive and it's got these other functionalities. I said, look, thanks for offering us that. We cannot do that. Yeah, I said, it doesn't fit. It's got to fit under this dollar figure. Yeah, and there's just no two ways about it. So if we were under the other model of thinking, the old way of thinking,
you would have gone, is there money in the bank account?
Is there money in the bank account?
Yes.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, great.
So we can use it.
With that. Yeah. No, and I think this is it's funny that you say old way of thinking and new way of thinking, what this bloke has said, because there's obviously a great book about personal finance that a lot of people have probably heard of, The Richest Man in Babylon. And so it's an ancient concept, this thing of pay yourself first. And that's whether it's at a business level or household level. It is really the only way to do it, is to, and we'll talk separately completely about all the logistics and how to make that actually happen. But it's really a mindset that you have to get first, which is to pay yourself first. You are an expense. Your profit or your savings or whatever you think about it is, that has to come first, and everything else has to come off the back of that. And however you make that fit within there, that's how it works. But the minute that you start to think, well, there's this money coming in, there's this money going out, and if there's any money left over, then that's our profit. You're going to run into trouble because it's just never going to happen like that.
Yeah.
It will magically line up that the money in equals the money out every single time, unless you change your mindset so that it is, as you say, this way of thinking of revenue, money in first, profit comes out first, and then whatever's left over is the expenses.
Look, mindset's a great term that you just used, because my mindset now is that I'm not thinking of the enterprise plan for Quilla and dreaming of that every single day.
That's
you know,
right.
like once we decided we got to make this fit under that cap.
Yeah.
You do that and you move on, and you never think about it again. Now, the household level is no different.
Yeah.
So if you decide, okay, well we're spending way too much money on entertainment and clothing, for example, so you halve that, like you slash it in half.
Yeah.
You're not sitting there every single day thinking, I've got no money to spend on this stuff, and you just frame your mind differently.
That's right.
And I've actually had feedback from people that said, we used to be out all weekend, every weekend, and what we've done now is we've said for 2 weekends out of the month, we're just going to stay at home, and they actually go, that was the best weekend we've ever had. Like we just stayed at home.
Yeah.
We got pizza in for dinner.
Yeah.
The kids watched Netflix. We watched Netflix. We went for a walk, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they've spent a fraction of what they usually spend sort of on that weekend. So it's just a frame of mind, and the mindset that you mentioned is a great term for that.
And I think that's as the advisor in that situation, it's a much better dynamic of having that conversation with people. So and we'll talk more about this in the logistics of it. But I hate talking about budgeting. I just find it so boring, because what you end up having is you're having a debate with someone about what their needs are. Yeah. And you go, I don't care. It's not my place to tell you what you. Yeah. Where I much prefer to come in as the third party is to say, like you just said, here's your money in every month or every fortnight or whatever. Here's the amount of money that I'm going to take away from you to put into super, or that you need to save and pay off your mortgage, or whatever we decide to do with that. But that's coming off the top. With the rest of that money, I don't care. I don't care what you do with it. I don't care. And that's exactly that attitude from the household level as compared to the business level, is that the profit, well, that's that savings portion that comes first. Your rest of your expenses can fight it out. You'll then, on a household level, you'll then work out, do I value having, is it Austar or Foxtel or whatever the pay-per-view TV is?
Yeah, there is Austar and there's Foxtel and there's...
but if I said to someone, you shouldn't have pay TV, and then I've got mates of mine who love watching horse racing, and so that's what they want to spend their money on every month. It's not my place to say, you shouldn't spend it on this or you shouldn't spend it on this. And that's exactly like you said with the business level, where when you see a new piece of software, you see this new thing come in and you go, well, I could pay for that every month, and this is what it would allow me to do. You don't have an argument about, is it good, is it not good? You're not having a debate with the salesman about how much it should cost. No. All you do is you go, I've got this much money for software. Yeah. If this thing comes in, something else must go. And then it becomes a very simple, easy sort of thought process, because you just go, well, the profit's already allocated. It's not allowed to chew into that. It's not an option. Of this money that's here, where does it fit in? And like you say, you then can make that decision without consulting anyone else in the business, because you go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what piece of software we're actually using, as long as it fits under that cap.
That's right. So to the household level, because that was the business level. So the household level is exactly the same. It just works slightly differently. And we're going to talk about the logistics of this in part 2 of this Profit First podcast. But conceptually first, you have a couple, let's say they're earning $180,000 together. So how this system works is that they decide they're going to put $30,000 into superannuation each year.
Yeah.
And what they have then is they have the remaining money to fight out over their expenses can fight amongst the remaining money. So forget about tax for a minute. Let's treat that as another expense. So $180,000 for the couple.
Yeah.
They put $30,000 into superannuation. They then have $150,000 a year to meet all of their other expenditures.
Yep.
it's profit first because they effectively said we're gonna wring out $30,000 profit out of this enterprise. And they put it into their superannuation fund. They then go through and make all of their expenses, including their income tax in this case, fit under that $150,000 of remaining money. Hey, they get back a bit over $10,000 in tax because they can contribute that $30,000 as a concessional contribution or tax deductible contribution based on the level of income that they have and the employer contributions that they would have there. So that's a help. But they basically just then go through and make all of their expenses fit underneath that amount.
And that's, the actual, I find the household level is actually even easier than the business level because, a couple of reasons is that you know what your income is probably more stable and more reliable. So, if you're a nurse or a school teacher or something like that, your income is fairly reliable. And also you don't normally have, it seems like you do have expenses that pop up out of nowhere, but they're normally the same amount every year. So you so that's sort of one part of why it's easy. But I think the second part of that to me is that you actually know what your target is. And this is where, we've just used $30,000 as an arbitrary figure there, but in reality, what we normally do as part of our initial process with our new clients is to say, this is the target this is where you said you want to end up in 10 years' time. What's the dollar amount that we need to change? If you've got $500,000 in super and you're on track for $1 million and you need $1.5 billion to have the retirement that you want, what do we need to do every year? What do we need to save every year to get you there? And then that's exactly the point is, if it's $30,000, you just go, that has to come off the top. I don't care then what happens with the rest of it, and I don't care what you spend it on or how those things fight it out, or whether you go and work more to, if you want to spend other money or do something like that. But that 30,000 is non-negotiable, and that's it. And it's easy from the perspective of your income and expenses are probably a bit more static than a business. But also there's a target in mind, and we've talked about this heaps. That if you know in the next 5 to 10 years this is what we're shooting towards, every time you're doing that, you know that it's in service of that end point that you wanted to get to, and it has to happen every month. Otherwise, it's just you're not going to get where you need it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, for those same people, if that was thrust upon them, as in the economy was suffering a downturn and their employers said,
if there was some global pandemic where people got a 30%.
If there was a theoretical global pandemic where their employers said, listen, you guys have to take a pay cut by $30,000 a year. The framing of their mind would be, and that's okay. We just got to cull some expenses, and within a relatively short period of time, they wouldn't notice the difference to their lifestyle.
No.
So this is just thrusting that upon yourself.
Yeah.
The good news is that it's for the complete benefit.
It's for your future.
As you do this, so
it's interesting that you say about the mindset is probably the right word, because it is a hard thing to get your head around. Where, for some people, this just makes intuitive sense. From a very young age, I'd never had any problem with saving for the future, because to me that was just, if you do this now, that's where that ends up in the future. But for some people, it's not something that they've given a lot of thought to. It's not something that makes intuitive sense. So you really have to break that down and go, this is for your benefit in the future. You have to make it very concrete as to saying, and we've talked about this in many other podcasts, about when you can make it very concrete as this is the benefit of where you will end up in 10 years' time. This is what your retirement will look like compared to if you don't do that. Usually people go, oh, well, why didn't you tell me that before? Of course we'll save the $30,000 a year, or we'll find it, or we'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. But if you just do it and the amount of times that I've heard people say this to, and you've had this even more so than me, of people that I've met and spoke to, and this is what I do, and they say, oh, I'll have to come and see you when I've got some money, or when I can save some money, I'll come and see you then. And you just go, it's just never going to happen. That's not, their mindset is that, well, there's money that comes in and money disappears and there's never anything left, but one day magically there will be money left over, and then I'll go and talk to Dallas and he'll make all my wildest dreams come true. And unfortunately, it's just not how it happens at all.
No, not at all. So we'll wrap up in just a minute, and then we'll go to part 2, which is the logistics of how to do this. But if you're new to the podcast, a couple of podcasts that you may be interested in checking out as well. There's one called claiming your $10,000 tax deduction. So that talks, I mentioned before that the couple contribute $30,000 per year. $10,000 and they get $10,000 back in tax returns. So that's a good one to listen to. Yep. In addition to that, there's adding $500,000 to your superannuation balance or retirement savings balance. I can't remember exactly the title of that. You'll see that as well. And that sort of walks you through how you can do that over the last 2 years.
And probably another one, just recent one, was the $100 a week into $100,000. Again, talking about making that very concrete. That's a good podcast to listen to about why we're doing what we're doing and that mindset shift of it's something that you want to do, not something that sort of happens to you. So, just a reminder, if anyone has any questions for the podcast, we've had another listener question come through that we've got to do a bit of research on before we can record that episode, but we'll be getting that out in the next couple of weeks. But if you have any questions or anything any theories that you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email that through. That's at podcast@mo50.com.au.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.